Okay, so let's move forward and let's talk about condom usage among adolescents. 79% of males and 58% of females report that they used a condom the last time that they had sexual intercourse. That sounds a little high in my opinion, and it brings us back to surveys, right? Because people oftentimes will give the socially desirable answer, and so they know they're supposed to say that they used a condom. The fact that more males report using a condom than females did kind of implies that something's off with this data. But this is all we have. All we know is that they say that most of them say that they're using it. Roughly half of females and 80% of males report that they're using condoms. The good news is the rates of STIs among adolescents are relatively low. About 10% of females and about 3% of males are test positive at some point for some STI. Now, if you look at this graphic I lifted off of the internet, 15 to 24-year-olds account for half of all new STD infections. Let's look at this graphic. I mean, 15 to 24, I don't know how they picked that age range exactly. 18 to 25 would be emerging adults. That would be an informative age bracket. 12 to 19 would be kind of maybe interesting because we're talking about adolescence. I mean, there are a lot of different ways that we could lump this together. I'm not exactly sure why they picked this particular age range, except for maybe to make it seem more like a young person might be vulnerable. And then when they say they account for half of all new STD infections, it's really important to note that a lot of these are treatable STDs. So they aren't necessarily the viral permanent kind of infections. The last thing I wanted to mention is that college students are much less likely to use condoms than teenagers are, than kids who are still in high school. A lot of times because college students have started to use more effective birth control methods like birth control pills or the shot or something like that, an IUD, and then they are lulled into a sense of complacency about not using a condom because I'm not going to get pregnant. Well, yeah, but you could still catch an STI. So there's a lot of stuff kind of mixed up together in this little graphic that I pulled off the internet. How about birth rate trends? I already showed you in one form of this that birth rates are down. This one breaks it up by racial groups. And one of the things that you'll notice is that, as of 1989, when they started breaking it up by racial group, you see that there are significantly more in 1989 teenage pregnancies between the ages of 15 and 19 among blacks and Hispanics than there were among whites. And but what we're seeing as we get to 2013 is a convergence of those numbers, so that all the racial groups are moving closer to the lower number. Still, blacks and Hispanics are higher than whites, but they're starting to move together. And what you're seeing, by the way, those numbers that are on the chart are the number of pregnancies per 1,000 females in that racial group and in that age group. So they're only looking at females between the ages of 15 and 19, and then these are the birth rates per 1,000 of females in those groups. So you see Hispanics have roughly twice the pregnancy rate of whites, and blacks are only a couple of points ahead of that. So while we're seeing convergence, we'd like to see everybody getting lower for the 15 to the 19-year-old females. Now, if we look by country, look at the United States. Again, this is per 1,000 girls between the ages of 15 and 19, because a lot of these countries you're going to look at them and go, well, those are small countries. They don't have anywhere near our population. But this is corrected for population size. So we see, 42 and a half girls in the U.S. per 1,000 will become pregnant, whereas, the U.K. is 26.7, and they look horrible compared to like Australia or Canada or Spain or Switzerland. Look at them at the very bottom. So we've clearly got a really high teenage pregnancy rate here in the U.S., and so this is something that we worry about. If we look at why girls are getting pregnant, how about the failure to use contraception rate? So in the light blue bars are the rate of babies being born before the age of 20. So it's not necessarily the 15 to 19 that I just showed you. It's having a baby before you turn 20. And then the dark blue bars are the no contraception at first intercourse. So this isn't necessarily saying I never use contraception, it's just I didn't use it at my first intercourse. What's really interesting is Sweden has a really low baby before 20 rate, but their no contraception at first intercourse is virtually the same as Canada's or the US, right? There, it's definitely the same as Great Britain. So if we compare it to this previous slide, whoops, wrong direction, where the United States has 42.5 births, babies born to girls between the ages of 15 and 19. And you look at something like Norway, we don't have Sweden on this chart, but something like Norway, which is very similar, is looking at 9.1. You're like, wow, they must do a way better job of educating about contraception and stuff. But then you look at this and you're like, wait, nobody's really using contraception at first birth. France, by the way, has mandated birth control for girls in their teen years, and in fact they insert like IUDs, and you don't remove them until you want to remove them, but everybody has one. So it's a little misleading to say no contraception at first intercourse in France. Those are only the girls who had intercourse before the mandated birth control. Something else is going on besides lack of information. Something else is going on besides failing to use contraception, right? Because we have roughly the same rates and we're not seeing as many babies born. So what about this? Adolescent pregnancy outcomes across countries. And we've got the US at the top. The dark orange areas are the number of pregnancies that end in abortion. We've got the lightest orange bar being those that end in birth, and then we've got the medium orange bars that are miscarriages. So in the US, 15 of the pregnancies end up in abortion, 34 in births, and 8 in miscarriages. If we go down to Norway or Sweden, we see much higher abortion rates. Look at Sweden. So they have, in this chart, a total of 29 pregnancies, 20 of them end in abortion. I had some students who were visiting me from the Netherlands, and so I pinned them down. Notice the Netherlands, they've got 14 pregnancies, 7 of which end in abortion. And I asked them, why do you think the Netherlands has so much lower birth rate among teenage girls compared to the US? And they said because there is a huge stigma in the Netherlands about a young girl becoming pregnant. If you manage to get pregnant with all the free contraception and all the education that's offered, it is your duty to go have an abortion because you know better, and people will stigmatize you if you are not married, you're in your teens, and you become pregnant. That's a different attitude than we have in the US. If a teenager becomes pregnant, we don't stigmatize necessarily. You see this high rate of births among the girls who get pregnant in the US. So it's a different attitude. It's not just about using contraception. It's about also how you handle an unplanned pregnancy. So what's wrong with teenage pregnancy? Why are we spending so much time talking about 15 to 19-year-olds? Well, teen mothers are nearly twice as likely to forgo prenatal care in the first trimester. And the first trimester is when it's most important to get information about prenatal vitamins and healthy eating and the things that would be healthy and beneficial for babies. Daughters of teen mothers are 3 times more likely to become teen mothers themselves when they grow up. And it's really surprising. Anybody who's ever thought about saying to their mom or their dad, well, you did this when you were my age, and therefore you don't have any business telling me not to do it. Whatever it is, whatever the it is in that sentence, can relate to why this might be the case. When a person is in a certain circumstance, they say to themselves, well, my mom turned out fine, I guess it's fine. And so here we see it manifested with teen pregnancy. My mom seems fine, I came out fine. We all say that, right? I came out fine. And then just 38% of teen girls who have a child before the age of 18 actually finish high school. And that means for the rest of this person's life, or until they ultimately go back and get their GED or something, they're going to be at a disadvantage. It's harder to find employment without a high school diploma. A person's earning capacity without a high school diploma is roughly a quarter of what it would be if they had a college degree, just a bachelor's degree, and roughly half of what it would be if they had a high school diploma. So it's just a lifetime of lowered earning capacity and lowered potential. What else? Marriages are less stable when they are between teenage parents. Sometimes when a couple becomes pregnant in their teen years, they'll be either forced or volunteer to get married. And it's a lot harder when you get married young. It's a lot harder if you get married for some other reason besides doing it voluntarily. Put those two things together, and it's a tough row. There are health risks for the mom and the baby. The younger the mom is, the riskier the pregnancy will be. Now, by the time a girl is like 17, her reproductive tract is pretty much matured, pretty much done. I'm hesitating because the cervix hasn't fully matured, and so it's more vulnerable to infection. But as far as functioning, it's pretty well matured. So I'm talking about girls who are 16, 15, 14. There are higher health risks for the mom and for the baby. And also because moms who are younger don't take as good a care of themselves. And so they may not be as, the baby might not be as healthy and stuff like that. Because if you're spending your pregnancy hiding it or denying it, you probably aren't taking the steps to provide proper nutrition and things. And then, of course, the socioeconomic repercussions that I was talking about before with the lack of a high school diploma, or even if you have your high school diploma, suddenly it becomes so much harder to finish college, or to afford daycare while you're trying to get started in a job. And I mean, the whole thing is it's harder. It's not impossible. It's just harder. So the national campaign to prevent teen and unplanned pregnancy. I pulled up the Washington data since we're in Washington. Washington ranks number 13 on the teen birth rate index, number 17 on the teenage pregnancy rate. So that means that we have pregnancies that don't result in births, and it could be partly access to abortion. It also could partly be miscarriage rates. But if we look at 2010, there were 11,040 teen pregnancies, and so that figures out to be 49 pregnancies per 1,000, which is a little bit above the national average. The national average is 4.2. But if you look at change, our teenage pregnancy rate in Washington is down 18% versus 2008, and it's down 55% from the peak year of 1988. So we're on the same downward trajectory as the rest of the country. We are a little bit above average in our teenage pregnancy rates. And then here we have teen births, which is slightly different from pregnancy rates, as we've already discussed. So in 2014, we aren't comparing year to year correctly on these two graphics, but we had 4,092 teen births. And that means 19.1 births per 1,000 girls in that age group. But those rates are down. Right, 7% from 2013, so 7% since the previous year, and then 64% reduction since the peak year in 1991. So we're making great strides, but I think there's one downside is including 18 and 19-year-olds in these numbers who are not probably still in school, high school at least. And so we're into a different demographic, in my opinion. I think we should be focusing on not teen birth rates as much as we should be focusing on like girls who should be in the K through 12 education system and haven't finished it yet. In my opinion, that would be more informative. Okay, well, enough on teenagers. Let us shift gears to young adulthood in the next segment.